We're talking today with Duane Quigg of Mona Shores, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Duane, can you start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Albion, Michigan on June 29th, 1925.
Okay. Now, did you grow up in Albion, or did you move
I
around?
was raised in Albion all the way through till I went in the service.
Okay. And what did your family do for a living when you were growing up?
My dad, well, we grew up during the Depression era. My dad, when I was a baby, a little kid, he'd worked he was sort of a manager of a filling station. But then he did some other things. One of the things he did was when it was so bad, the Depression, that he had a truck and he hauled ashes for the building and loan who had his loan. And that's how he paid for the mortgage on his house. He never was on public assistance, but he started at that time. One time he had 14 motorcycles. He'd buy motorcycles, fix them up, and sell them. He ended up being in the repair business, a garage, which he operated. He had a building in behind our house. Big part of his customer base was farmers who really didn't have any money, so they would bring us chickens, and we had a chicken hutch at one time. We had a rabbit hutch of, I think we had 100 rabbits. One time we had a cow we milked until we butchered it. We had various things. And we traded services, they did at that time, because I remember as a kid that I went out and milked the cow and I fed the chickens. But anyhow, that was the way that he got by, and I think that would be about the sum of it. You know?
Okay.
I mean,
And how many kids were in your family?
I had one brother, 5 years younger.
Okay. All right. Now, you were in high school when Pearl Harbor happened?
I was where I was across, there was a milk house across the river. We were on the south side, or the north side of the river. On the south side was this dairy, and we bought milk, 5 gallons. I mean, skim milk was 5 cents a gallon, whole milk was a quarter a gallon. But anyhow, I'd been over. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. I'd went over and bought a gallon of milk and bring it home. And if you know Albion at all, its cemetery's kind of along the river, but I was just driving along by the cemetery, and here come on the news that Pearl Harbor had happened. So I was the first one when I got home and told family about it. But I have to say that I personally wasn't surprised about Pearl Harbor, because I really truly believe that Roosevelt knew Pearl had broken the Japanese code, and I think he allowed them to attack just simply so that we'd be able to get into war. I mean, we were selling junk. I mean, if you'd read, I read a lot at that age, and there was all the publications were talking about how we were selling all of our scrap to Japan, so they built a war machine. I mean, we knew that as a nation.
Yeah, I mean, there's but you were kind of aware though of the tensions with Japan and the stuff going on at that time, and were you also paying attention to the news from Europe, the war going on there?
I was well aware.
Okay.
I was alert 16-year-old.
Yeah, because some people were and some people weren't. So,
No,
so in a way, when we get into the war, it's not that big a surprise. Once you did get in, did you think that it might not last long enough for you to get in it?
No, I never had that thought.
Okay, all right.
I figured that I was hooked.
Now, did you want to go and enlist, or did you want to wait till you got drafted?
I really wanted to be a fighter pilot. That was my dream in life, is to be a fighter pilot.
Okay, and what would you have to do? Did you try to apply for that?
I went to Kellogg Base in Battle Creek and went through all the tests, and the last test was an eye test, and I failed that. So therefore, I chose not to enlist in the Air Force if I couldn't be a pilot.
Okay, all right. And then so instead, basically, you waited and Now, when did you finish high school?
I finished in 1943 in the beginning of June, and I had taken tests in high school about the A12, V12 tests, which was the precursor or something of the Army Specialized Training Program, and I'd been accepted for that. And so I waited till I was drafted on 12 days after I turned 18. I was in the Army.
All right.
And so I ended up going to Fort Benning, Georgia for my basic training.
Okay. Now, how did they get you from Michigan down to Fort Benning?
Well, we went by train from, I think we went from Battle Creek, I believe it was, or Albion, I forget just where we did, but I think it was Battle Creek. And then we went on down to Chicago and south down.
Okay. How long did the train ride take?
I really don't remember exactly, but it was a long train ride. The first time I'd ever really been on a long train ride. The only train ride I ever had before was to go to a ball game in Detroit in the 30s.
Right. Okay. So when you were on the train ride, could you look out the windows and see the scenery, or did they keep everything closed up?
No, we could see very clear. There was nothing.
Okay. And
secretive.
And did you have to stop a lot? Did the train stop much?
No,
or?
I don't think we did.
Okay. All right. Now you get down to Fort Benning. Now, what time of year was that? It's in the summer?
This would have been in the summer, fall, late, beginning of late summer.
Okay. All right. And what was the basic training like there?
Well, it was interesting, as a matter of fact. We were in an area that was the south part of Fort Benning. The OCS unit was north of us, but we didn't have the permanent buildings that they had. But we went out. One of the things that I'll never forget, they have a different kind of snakes than we have in Michigan, and we got trained about what kind of snakes we'd see out, and I remember the little coral snake that we've been told about, but there was another snake, the same thing, with the color bands were different. And we did find one of those that, with the color bands different, but we all thought we'd found ourselves a poisonous snake.
Right.
Yeah, but we didn't have it. But that's the way it was.
Okay. Now, when you got to basic training, how much emphasis was there on discipline?
I guess I would have to think there was probably a lot on discipline. I don't know. I mean, I don't think we had a discipline problem.
Okay. So people adjusted to that part of it.
Yeah.
And were the drill sergeants?
We were young people,
Okay.
and we knew that we had to toe the line.
Okay. And were the drill sergeants reasonable people, or were they crazy?
I thought they were reasonable.
Okay.
I don't have any negative parts about it.
All right.
I do have, I've always been a competitive person, but I do remember in basic training, at the end of basic, we had the obstacle course. We had a contest from each squad and each company, and I ended up winning the obstacle course for the division, or for our training session.
Okay. So you were in pretty good shape, too.
Oh, I was in good shape, yeah.
Okay.
And I was physically active. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I climbed trees and did all that stuff.
Okay. So adjustment to Army life then wasn't so bad.
Well, I mean, it wasn't what you chose, but I mean, I didn't have a problem.
Okay. Now, how long did the basic training go?
I think it was it 12 weeks or?
All right.
I think. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah. You have different times and different situations and different eras, but 12 weeks is about right for when you went in. Okay. Now, at this point, did you know that you were going to go on to the ASTP program?
Yes, I did know.
Okay.
I was in the ASTP. This was all ASTP people.
Okay.
The thing that was rather interesting was that there was a large group of people from Michigan and a large group of people from Boston area. A lot of them. Can we shut it down for a minute? Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So you've got a lot of people from the Northeast, a lot of people from Michigan in the unit together.
That was primarily the two groups that were doing it. These were the kids from Northeastern, probably, most of them were in college. They seemed to be probably not older, but just maybe just a little bit because they'd had some college, where most of us from the Midwest were just out of high school.
Right. Okay. Now, where did they send you from?
Okay,
Fort Benning.
we were sent to different places, but the group that I was with, we went to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and I was out of, I want to say, 34th Street at the Quadrangle, and we were right in the college dorm rooms, that 4 of us, and we went over, and this was big time going to University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, big city and everything. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what did you do there?
Well, chase nurses, silver nurses training. That was the fun part of it. But anyhow, we were taking a course. It was I think it was a term in 12 weeks or something. It was a real rapid deal, and I would say there was a number of, not a number, but a few of them that probably flunked out. But fact is that we got the term done, and they decided that they were going to invade Europe, and they needed people to build up the infantry, and so a lot of these guys in the ASTP, not particularly where I was, but had people that were from all different flavors of the service. Some had been officers, some had been NCOs, but we all got sent to the infantry divisions, every one of them, or most every one of them.
Now, what was the ASTP supposed to be for? What were you actually training for?
The reason they had the ASTP program is that all of the college students had been drafted, or future college students. Where was I?
Well, I was asking what the purpose of the ASTP was. You said the colleges had lost their students.
This time, all the college kids were being drafted into the service, and there was no engineers or doctors or other skills that were necessary for this human race, if you would, or for our country. And so they decided they ought to at least be making the preparations so that for replacements of these kind of jobs.
Right.
And that was the whole purpose.
Yeah, so a lot of you are really training as engineers, isn't it?
A lot of them was for engineers. I had a friend that was there with me. He ended up going to the project in Chicago where they built the atomic bomb.
Okay.
I forget.
The Manhattan Project.
Manhattan Project. Yeah. He went there. Al Rand did, and yeah, there was a lot of skillful, smart people there.
All right. But in your case, it gets shut down, and then where do they send you then from Philadelphia? Where do you go next?
From Philadelphia, I got sent to the 95th Infantry Division at in Pennsylvania.
Indiantown Gap?
Indiantown Gap, yeah, Indiantown Gap. And we were there, the first thing when we got there, I got the opportunity to go to mountain climbing school, and they asked for volunteers, and everybody told me not to volunteer, but I did. And that was one of the fun times in the Army. We went down to West Virginia, and Seneca rock climbing school, rock mountain climbing, and had a couple weeks there, and it was a fun time. Wished I would have been able to have done more of it for pleasure afterward. Right. We thought we'd probably be sent to Italy because there was talk at that time. Anyhow, we came back home. There was one group of us went with mule skinners, with horses and mules, taking them across the mountains, and the group of us that were rock climbing. Well, anyhow, when we came back, it wasn't too long that we got word that we were going to be shipped to Europe.
Okay. And then roughly when was this? What year, what time of year? Is this in 44 now?
This was in 1944, in the spring, right after I got out, when they closed the ASTP program. And so I can't tell you exactly, but it was cold yet, because we had to have heavy coats on when we were down there.
Okay. And then where did they send you to ship out?
we went to Boston.
Okay.
And we shipped across on the, no, what was the name of it? It was a maiden voyage across. I think it was been a cruise ship in the Caribbean. It was
Okay.
no fiddle. My memory is.
What was it? A big liner?
Oh, it was a big ship, but it was a passenger ship, and it was a cruise ship, and it really was not a very comfortable with, you know, all of us on it. We came home on the USS General Gordon, and it was a ship built for troops, and it was so much more comfortable, even though it wasn't a
It wasn't a passenger liner otherwise.
passenger liner at all. It was a troop ship.
Now, on the liner going over, did they still have all the individual rooms and just stuff guys into them, or did they
Yeah.
cuddle? Okay.
I think it was more or less that way,
Yeah.
and we slept on bunks and
Yeah.
stuff.
All right. And did the ship sail by itself, or were you in a convoy?
I think that there were other ships because the submarines were a real potential problem.
Yeah. Well, I asked because a few of the liners went fast enough that they went by themselves. So the Queen Mary went by itself, for instance.
Did it? I don't
Yeah.
know.
But there were other ships. You were probably in a fast convoy, but we still
It
have
could
other
be,
ships.
but our ship was a fast ship. I mean, you know.
Yeah. But you weren't with the Liberty ships. You were
No,
doing
no,
that now.
no.
Okay. And about how long did the crossing take?
I don't know, 4 or 5 days.
Okay. Yeah.
It wasn't a long
Fast
time.
trip. Did you zigzag back and forth while you went?
I really don't remember.
Okay. And do you remember if people got seasick?
I think that there's always got seasick, but people really got seasick on my way coming home.
Oh, okay.
Now. Coming home, we hit a hurricane, and I've never seen so many sick people in my life. I couldn't even go down in the hole.
All right. Okay. So you go across, and then where do you land when you get across the Atlantic?
Liverpool.
Okay.
Landed at Liverpool, went over to, I want to say Miles Standish. I don't remember if that's
Now,
right.
Miles Standish will be the camp in Boston.
No, it was Miles Standish in Boston.
Yeah.
But it was in west of England. There was a camp there. I can't remember the name. It was north of, is it Winchester that we north of? I just,
That's possible.
because I think it was. Where was, I don't know.
Well, basically, you're in a large camp in England.
Yeah,
Oh.
it wasn't a huge camp, but it was camped there. And then we sailed out of Southampton.
Okay. But now, you arrived in England, though, if you're crossing in the spring, that's before D-Day. So do you remember where you were when
wait a
D-Day
minute.
happened?
No, wait a minute. We don't think it was, I don't think it was after, I think it was probably after D-Day.
Okay.
When we got to England.
All right. Because you don't stay there too long, but they ship you
We
off.
stayed there I think we were there a couple of weeks.
Yeah, then that's probably after D-Day
Uh-huh.
that you cross. Okay. And then how do they get you across the channel?
Well, we went down to Southampton, got on a ship like the one down here in Muskegon. LST. And we had a fire and a boiler, a barrel and full of sea rations. We were out in the channel for a week eating these sea rations. And then we landed at Omaha Beach. We got on the beach, and they had the vehicles of our division were used to haul supplies up because they had conquered Paris by that time. And so we ended up, we're a week or so on the beach there. And so we...
Okay. Now, your unit, you were in the anti-tank company of your regiment. Now,
Yeah.
what kind of weapons did the anti-tank company have?
Well, we had 57 millimeter guns. We had bazookas. We had rifles and carabines.
Okay.
And,
You had the regular infantry weapons plus
Yeah.
the 57s.
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't have bigger anti-tank guns. You didn't have 76s or anything like that.
No, those aren't anti-tank guns.
Well-
Those are artillery pieces.
Well, 76. We had 76 millimeter anti-tank guns, but that were used in some units later on. But the standard one was the 57.
I don't think there was any bigger than the 57 during the war.
There was. I'm a historian. I know this stuff.
Okay, is that fact?
But they didn't issue them to you.
Okay, I didn't know there was any bigger.
Had to
I
be.
knew there was 76 that were artillery pieces.
Well, the 75 was the small artillery piece, and that was on the standard Sherman tank, and
Yeah.
other Shermans had a long 76 on them. The M10 tank destroyer had a 76, and they had some towed ones. So,
But I didn't know there was any towed ones.
all right,
Okay, well, we didn't have them.
you didn't have them. You just had the little ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
They used to have 37 millimeters.
Okay. And now, would you tow the anti-tank guns behind trucks
Yeah.
or weapons carriers or?
A truck.
Okay. All right. So you've landed. You camp out on the beach for a while, and then you load up on the trucks and go inland.
Yeah, we went over and we were a week or two on the beach while the trucks of all of the division trucks were used for
Moving
hauling
equipment.
supplies.
Yeah. Okay.
Hauling supplies up to the troops that
Right.
had been running across to Paris.
Okay.
So anyhow, we ended up, we all got on our things and we went on up and went to where the Maginot Line was. Because I remember I got some pictures of that where we were, just there. I don't know why we were there, I can't tell you, but it was, nothing happened. And then we went over to Metz,
Okay.
our division.
Now, what was going on at Metz at that time?
Well, there'd been a couple divisions that had been trying to capture it because that was where the front was. And they hadn't done any good on it. And our division, I think we were involved for probably a week or so and captured Metz.
Okay. Now,
First time in 1,500 years Metz had ever been captured. You had Mézières with the real bitter part of the fighting occurred going in.
all right. Now, did your company see much action, or were you just in reserve waiting for something to happen?
Well, we really didn't see much action. We were kind of on the south side. That's just the way it was.
Okay.
Anti-tank, we didn't, as a unit, we did not see a lot of action. I mean, as individuals, we saw some, but not as a unit.
Okay, because at that point we had surrounded Metz, and the rest of the line was a little bit farther east. But you weren't too
No.
far from.
No, the line wasn't farther east.
Well, Metz was surrounded, though.
What?
We had surrounded Metz. It was
Yes.
isolated,
Yeah.
and then so there's Americans on all sides of it.
On Metz, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But we weren't between Metz and Saarlotten, that was still German.
Yes. But the Germans didn't have a road that got them all the way into Metz, though.
I'm not quite sure.
Well, if Metz is surrounded, the Germans can't get in or out.
No. I assume that they were surrounded.
Yeah, they were. But the other Germans were not very far away.
No.
Okay, all right. And now, were you watching for possible German counterattacks, or were you just sitting there waiting for something to happen?
No, we're always concerned. That was always a concern about German counterattacks and stuff. Yeah. We when we got to the next little place beyond there, I forget whether it was up here. I don't remember, but that's where our little unit had some involvement.
Okay. Okay, so basically, initially you're at Metz and the infantry kind of go in and finish that,
Yeah.
and then you move outward toward the main German line, and
I'm not sure the Germans had a line
they sort of do, but
like
anyway.
World War One.
Not the trench line kind of thing, but there's the Germans over there and we're over here. But anyway,
Yeah.
but you're heading toward. Well, you basically now you're going toward toward Germany essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, and now and then you mentioned pretty quickly your company starts to get involved at that point.
Well, everybody's, I mean, we're not more, I can't say we're more involved or less involved.
Well,
I mean, you get involved because of people.
Right. But the question is, at what point do you start to actually get into combat, or does your unit get into some more serious fighting at that point? Or?
Well, I mean, I don't know what you consider serious fighting or not. I mean, we left Metz, and we had one place where we were, a German artillery shell come down and hit with 4 or 5 guys in our squad.
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys in our place was trying to knock a German tank out and got his leg blown off. He was my sergeant. He worked at Oldsmobile. It was a funny story. I was called on Olds. We were selling them camshafts for their Olds diesel. But anyhow, I saw him in the office there, and I'd ask him, I says, how's your leg doing? Because I'd want to see him at Percy Jones when he had his leg off, and he says, nobody here even knows that because I don't talk about it. And he had been with the artificial limb since the war and
Okay. All right.
part of life.
Okay. Now, what was your actual job in your company?
My actual job was a bazooka man. But the fact is that I did more than bazooka man sometimes, but that was my classification.
Okay. Now, did you actually ever fire the bazooka at any German tanks?
Never at a tank.
What did you shoot it at?
I shot it at smokestacks.
Okay. So target shooting.
Target shooting.
All right. So you were you ever in a situation where your company was actually confronting enemy tanks?
Well, yeah, several times.
Okay.
We were confronting a German tank held up in this little town, it buried underneath a building, and that's how one of the guys that lost his leg was going down there trying to do something. I was one of our sergeants. We had at that time, a P-51. I'd never seen a P-51 in my life. I loved airplanes, but I knew we had them. But anyhow, he come in, dropping bombs on this building, and went spinning up out. I was literally out of sight. It was a thrill seeing him do that, because I'd never seen one.
All right.
But
Okay.
no, artillery was the real big problems of casualties in most of the people.
Yeah, and certainly for your unit, if your guys are advancing, the anti-tank company is not right out in front. The infantry go out first.
Well, the fact is that most of at the point where we were, except for at Metz, it was mostly just moving.
Okay, so let's follow you after Metz. So Metz falls. You're moving. You're advancing. And then what area do you go into? Is it into the Saar or?
No. It was just a little ways down the road from Metz where we got hung up with this German tank I was telling you about. And there was a big valley, and on the other side was the Germans, and we were on this side. Might I take that?
All right. So you're basically, but what was the? You eventually, I guess, on the map of where your division goes, there's a town, this Saarlaufen or something like that.
Well, that's later on.
Okay, but you're hung up with this tank in the house, and how do you get rid of that?
Well, what happened is that P-51 knocked it out.
Oh, he took it out. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's how we got out. But we had quite a few people injured there. We had one guy. He had an artillery shell, didn't land any farther than that wall from him. It hit him in both legs and both arms, but it didn't hit his body section. I was sitting in a room, everything was stone houses usually over there, but this one only had a stone at the entryway, and I was sitting like here writing a letter. This stone was behind me, and when these artillery shells come, I had a big old piece of shrapnel come within inches of my legs. And it was a coincidence when I got home. For that particular day, my mom said, my dad didn't want my mom to say anything. He said, did something happen on this date or something? She knew that I was in extreme danger that day, because that was the day that it took out all these people in our squad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you wonder about things like that. But she
So you knew.
She knew.
So you get past that and you keep kind of going forward.
Yes.
And then
We go down to the Saar, and we get to where that was the only bridge, one of the few bridges in Germany that wasn't blown up, that bridge there on the Saar River. And the 379th Infantry, we were 377th, but the 379th had went across that bridge and captured it some way, and had pushed on. The river went around this way and over here, and so they. Later on I went down that road because I got selected to go down, but anyhow, there were. The fields were just full of dead 379th Infantry people. The Germans had slaughtered them. Yeah. But anyhow, that's where we got to there. And I'll never forget it that I had guard duty every day for a period of time. We stayed there for a while. I don't remember what. This was before the bulge. Just before. But anyhow, they were dropping 2,500 shot rounds a day, trying the Germans to blow it up, that bridge. I can't really tell you the distance. I've got it in the map. But anyhow, you go down around, and the Saar River curved around, and down here on the other side was the Siegfried Line. And so the Americans had got down on one side of the river, and the Germans on the other. Well, anyhow, we were there for a while, and we had a thing. I showed you the picture of it where we had guard duty out there. We had a walkway, a little bridge across below the bridge that hadn't been blown up, so that we could get across, so that the Germans didn't know it was there. They couldn't see it. It was kind of in the cover. And so we were there for a little while, and I remember one day that we were doing something, and they needed a bazooka down there, and I'll never forget, I went down across. That's how I went across that area. It was maybe a mile or something, but there was this big buildings. There were Germans and Americans both in it, like a big apartment type building, and the Germans with their 240 emplacements, and they'd shoot these guns off, and it was just like blowing your blast in your. You think the building's going to go because it was just across the river. But I'll never forget. I was in a room when one of these what do you call them? Mortar went up and came in through the ceiling and didn't go off. And there were a couple of us in that room. We were very fortunate, but anyhow, that was a very scary deal.
All right. Now, do you have an idea about how long you stayed in that area?
And I can't tell you how long, but it was.
For a couple of weeks or
probably.
more?
I don't know. Time-wise, I've just kind of forgotten.
Now, were you still there when the Battle of the Bulge started?
Yes.
Okay.
We were there when the Battle of the Bulge started, and that's when they turned over what we had to another division, and our division was pulled out, and we went up through Luxembourg and up through to Bastogne. In fact, we were just not too far from there. We got there about the time that they went by. We were at the, not really in the Battle of the Bulge, but we were right behind it.
So the point when the Germans are getting pushed back out of the Bulge, and you kind of get to Bastogne when the Germans have mostly been pushed east of it. So you could keep going north from there? Because you went up to Liège.
We went up to Liège.
Yeah, that's pretty much due north.
And we stayed at Liège for a couple weeks. I don't remember just how long. I really don't remember. But it was several weeks.
Now, were you moving just in the backs of trucks at that point? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. And was the weather still cold then? Or do you not really remember?
I'm just trying to think what time. It was snowy at the time
Yeah.
of the bulge.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember the dates it was, but it was cold,
Yeah.
snowy.
Now, did you mostly get to sleep inside buildings, or?
Yeah, we always slept in buildings. We
All right.
just slept in German buildings. Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't have to camp outside in the snow or anything
No.
like that. All right. So you go up to Liège, and now it's getting in, probably into late winter.
It was probably getting towards spring.
Yeah.
Because when we ended up, we went through Maastricht, and it was got to Duisburg, and we had orders. It was 2 weeks. Was it 2 weeks before Easter, or I think it was. We had orders that we were going to eat Easter morning breakfast in Berlin. That was our orders. Okay? And come Easter, we were still sitting in the same spot. Because Roosevelt at Yalta and Potsdam had made the agreement with the Russians that they could enter Berlin first. And so our division, parts of it went up to Bremen, Bremerhaven, the submarine pens in that area. And our particular group, we went over toward Hanover, swung around a circle near the Elbe, and came back to the Ruhr pocket. And our division ended the war at the Ruhr pocket.
Okay. Now, as you were moving through Germany, what kinds of things did you see?
Rubble. Rubble, rubble, rubble. The Allied Air Force had really desecrated Germany. Really bad. I think most people in this country can't even dream of how bad it was.
Because the Ruhr is a big urban industrial area, and so you'd have a lot of bombing attacks through the whole war.
Well, I mean, you had but the whole of Germany where we went was that way.
Okay. Even if you were out in the countryside?
Well, no, not up the countryside. I mean the towns.
Yeah. Okay. And then how much did you see of the civilian population as you went through?
Well, we saw not much as we were going through, but at the end of the war, though, we saw lots of them.
Right. Okay.
You know, there was a lot of people who had they had a lot of restrictions about fraternizing with the Germans. We didn't have any of that problem.
Okay. Now, before...
Incidentally, and while we were going, we liberated some of the Russians and people that were in the camps.
POW camps, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so we were, it was...
So did you see any of those POWs in those camps?
I'll never forget, we stopped at one where we were there, and they knew we were coming. I don't know for why, but they had taken and made this liquid lightning. And they served everybody, I think it was just straight alcohol, I don't know. But they were tickled to death. They were Russians, varieties of people, but mostly Russians.
Okay.
And Polish and stuff. But everybody was in the same page. Yeah.
Now, in the course of the time when the war was still going on, did you ever see any German aircraft?
Oh yeah, the first time I saw a jet airplane was over in Holland, near Maastricht. I saw this German, what was the
ME-262 was
the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was first jet plane I'd ever seen. Of course, I'd heard about them, but yeah, that was something. In fact, I wrote a letter to my dad, because my dad had been in the Air Force in World War I. You know, whether you saw his picture in there, but anyhow, the censor knocked it out, wouldn't let me send it.
All right. So once you go into Germany, did you meet any resistance? Were there still snipers or things like that, or was it pretty quiet?
Well, there was lots of things, but the fact is, I'll never forget for a minute, it was kind of a scary thing, but it was only for a minute. I never forget that we had guard duty, and everybody had to stay up. We guarded 100% of the time at night. And I'll never forget, I had to go on guard duty at 7 o'clock in the morning that morning, and so I went outside the door to where we were, and here come some Germans. And man, before it was done with, there was 20-some Germans but I had to holler and get. They wanted to surrender. You know, that was a kind of a startling thing in the morning to wake up and get out there and have all these.
And did you wind up seeing a lot of Germans after they surrendered? Were there a lot of Germans surrendering to your unit, or just that one little bunch?
Oh, we've captured a number of Germans, but the fact is that particular thing was rather interesting.
Sure. Now, the prisoners, were they about your age, or were they older or younger?
There were some younger ones and there were some older ones. I mean, they were a big variety of ages. One time when we were on kind of the spearhead across Germany, we were, our captain or lieutenant got off course and we ended up in, man, oh man, here was a big valley like this. And, and we didn't know where we were. There was a town up here, but he didn't know where we were either because we were off, because here come all these shooting at our convoy. So we got off, and it happened to be that my sergeant and I were at the last truck, and so we got a machine gun off, and we started firing, and that all ended on the other side, and pretty soon, here come the town up above. Everybody with a flag on them or something, they were marching out, and what happened to the Germans, they took off too, because they knew that it was, you know, what it was. But anyhow, that town vacated. But anyhow, we turned around and we went the other way.
All right. So now we get kind of in the German surrender in May, and then you were in the Ruhr pocket area at that time.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did your unit then stay there, or did they move you someplace else?
No, I think we stayed there pretty much till we were ready to go.
Right.
And then they were shipping us back to the U.S.
Yeah. How long did you stay in Germany after the war was over?
Well, I got home on the 28th day of June, 1944.
Okay. So not too long. So maybe.
So that tells you something.
Yeah. So a month or so, not too long.
I don't, you know, it wasn't a long time.
Okay. But you said that while you were there, then you saw a lot of the German civilians. They came out and.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, I got film from a German photographer. He had film. We horse traded. The Germans girls, we dated the German girls. They'd been missing guys too because they were in the service.
Sure.
I mean, you know, it was just.
Yeah. Now, did they need food? I mean, did they?
I don't think it was really, food was a big issue.
Okay, so at least not there. All right. Okay.
Because, you know, that area up in there is pretty much farm country for Germany.
Okay. Because there are some parts, and particularly in some of the cities, where there were real shortages, and that's a whole other issues. But okay, but for your group, that wasn't really the issue.
I don't think so.
All right. Now, did people start cleaning up the streets and that kind of thing?
I don't
or
think
not much
so.
while you were there?
Not there while I was there.
Because you weren't there too long. So you leave. So you make your crossing back in June then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got back on June 28th.
All right. And you said you got caught in a hurricane on the way.
Yep. It was. I've never envisioned the sea so wild. We had this big ship, 800 foot or so. It would set like this, and you'd look down at the bow. It looked like it was 100 foot down, and then the front half would get covered, and on the back you'd look up. It looked like you were looking up 100 feet, and I wasn't able to go down below for 3 days because it stunk so bad. I stayed right on the deck. There were several of us because I never seen so many sick people in my life, but we made an effort to make sure we ate because the cooks did cook food upstairs. And so, yeah, it was a tough crossing for a lot of soldiers on that boat.
How long did the storm last?
I don't know, 3 days or something. It was terrible.
Okay. And then where did you land in the States?
We landed at Newport News.
Okay, so Virginia. All right. And then did you get to leave home at that point?
Yep. I got a 30-day leave. Yep, for the month of July, and had to report the 1st of August.
Okay, and where did you have to report to?
Camp Shelby, Mississippi,
Okay.
just south of Hattiesburg. And we were going to be reassigned and given equipment to get ready to go to Japan, because we knew we were the 2nd Division. The 28th, I understand, was already at the port, and we were going to be the next one. And on the 6th and 9th, Little Boy and Fat Man happened. I'll forever be grateful to Harry Truman. Now, I had never thought much of him as before that, and I think I will forever, he will be my hero, because he saved my life. I have no doubt about it, because I think that if we would have invaded Japan, there'd have been 1 million of us killed, and probably more than that of the Japanese. It's about that simple. So that was really one of the wisest decisions of the war, not ending it.
Oh. All right, but now when you get the news that the Japanese surrender, that's pretty good, but you still are in the Army for a while after that, right?
Well, what happened is that our division, I had enough points to get out, but our division was going to be deactivated right away. But our company clerk was a real high pointer. He, from Camp Swift days back, I mean, I had enough points to get out, but he had twice as many as, if you will. And I had on my record that I knew how to type and stuff, and so they asked me if I would be the company clerk. So I said, yeah, okay. And so, but I didn't realize that a number of us young ones in different places discharged the old timers. Well, they ended up declared us essential.
Yes.
And so we ended up discharged our whole division, and we got sent to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And so I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina till January.
All right. And did you mostly, as a clerk, were you processing everyone else's discharge?
I was working 3rd shift, processing people out of the service.
Oh boy.
That was my job. That's okay. I mean, I felt I was doing something good. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't like it, but I got out in time so I could go to college on the spring term at college, and so that was important too. Okay. And besides that, I had the GI Bill, which was really, really a wonderful thing.
Now, where did you go to college?
Well, I went to Albion College. I was going to take 2 years at Albion and then get my engineering degree from Michigan. So I was all set to do that, but I went down to Ann Arbor and couldn't get a job. And so, anyhow, at that time, I got married in 1947. And so we had a little flying club in Albion, so I took my wife and me, we hopped in a little T-craft and flew down to Angola, Indiana, to Tri-State to see what that was like. I ended up at Pleasant Lake, got a job with a lumber company there, got an apartment, got enrolled in college, and so we rolled Angola, Indiana, and went to Tri-State and got my engineering degree.
All right. And then once you got the degree, did you kind of go to one job and stay, or did you move around a lot?
Well, I I got a job. I wanted to move along Lake Michigan as far north as I could go, because I love to hunt and fish and stuff. And so I was fortunate enough that I got a job at Muskegon Motor Specialties, and I worked there up until it would be in the 60s, and then I went off on my own and started the business down at 31 and 45, and then sold that company, and so I had a series of places, manufacturing plants. I probably started 7, 8 plants. Okay.
All right. Now, when you look back at the time that you spent in the service, first of all, are there particular memories that you've got or things that stand out in your mind that you haven't brought into the story here yet?
Well, I'm just trying to think. I made some really good friends, which, were friends for most of my life,
Right.
there's some that I wished I could have kept up with that I just didn't because of busyness.
Mm-hmm.
But I was fortunate that I was able to see a lot of the world that I'd never seen. And even though I went to England, I ended up later on that I used to go to England every month. So that wasn't any big deal. But anyhow, I was able to, after the, when I had grandkids at 14 and 15. We took them on a trip around the world, but anyhow, we went over to Europe and we traced all of my steps in the service and where we went and stuff. They enjoyed it, and I enjoyed having them do it.
Now, how do you think the time in the service affected you? Were you different when you came out, or did you know more than before?
I don't know. I never thought of it that way. I really wouldn't be able to answer that. I'm sure that it would have had an effect, but I have no idea of what kind of effect. Because I mean, I am who I am, you know.
Do you think you learned anything while you were in the service that helped you in your career or other parts of life?
I really don't know.
Okay.
I really don't.
That's why we ask the question. Some people can answer, some can't. All right. Well, it does make for a good story, and a different one from what I've had before. So I'd like to just thank you very much for sharing it today.
Well, thank you.